Let me first request Chairman of the Board of Japan Bank for International Cooperation, Tadaishi Maeda, to kick off this morning with his thoughts and intervention.
Thank you, Samir. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Raisina Roundtable Tokyo. It's the first kickoff meeting. Yesterday, in the evening event, I referred to the speech by the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, titled The Conference of the Two Seas. Prime Minister Kishida also referred to this speech. Two great nations in Indo-Pacific, India and Japan, both supporting freedom, democracy, and rule of the law. And this is a huge potential for the cooperation of two nations as a member of the Quad that Mr. Kishida also referred to. However, what's right now, that what it's doing right now is not big enough compared with a potential. That only the G2G based cooperation is not enough. We need a more broader cooperation between the businesses, private capitals, and so on. That's very important for the purpose of creating prosperous the economies and also that free and prosperous Indo-Pacific regions. India, starting of Prime Minister Modi's and his administration's effort, in 2016, enactment of the bankruptcy law. In 2017, abolishment of very cumbersome the indirect taxation system and introduction of GST. And 2020, the simplification of the labor law. And 2021, introduction of a PLI, production-linked incentive, which to motivate more foreign direct investment from abroad to India. So in absence of the strong leadership of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Dr. Jaishankar and his the post-Modi administration, it was not able to achieve. In Raisina Dialogue 2 weeks ago, I had two meetings with a Minister, Ashwini Vaishnaw, who's in charge of IT and also the telecommunication and railways. I learned from him that for 10 years since 2014, under the Clean India campaign, the Modi administration created 100 million toilets for sanitation system in India. Because of this, under the Clean India campaign, the administration encouraged a drastic change of awareness and also of behavior modification of the population, big people, 1.4 billion people in India. And the using of access to the toilet in 2014 was only 40%. Now 2022 is 96%. It has been dramatic improve, which they accomplished. And also very quick, rapid, the facilitation of fostering the infrastructure are now underway. I am very proud of that high-speed railway from Japan is now under construction. I negotiated, by the way, on this deal with Dr. Jaishankar when he was Secretary of External Affairs. He's now Minister of External Affairs. Therefore, that's, I'm very proud of this achievement. And our bank, JBIC, is also very strongly supporting the infrastructure building up in India, including Dhrera semiconductor cities, and also DMICDC. I was the director of DMICDC with Amitabh Kant, a friend of mine, who was a G20 Sherpa last year. And also under the framework of Quad, we made a contribution to support the COVID-19 vaccination production in India. And also that we are going to make financial support to construction data center by NTT nearby Mumbai Sea. And since 2020, for 4 years' time, that JBIC already provided $14 billion financial support. And most recently, using that bankruptcy law, the Nippon Steel, one of the sponsors of this event, they made a huge investment to acquire the SR. It's a bankrupted steel mill company, and expand this steel mill of SR, which is a very important and necessary initiative towards carbon neutrality, because they're not using coking coal for making that steel. In 2021, JBIC provided financing to the automotive industry, and also that 23, the construction, the equipment industry, and also most recently agriculture, machinery business as well. And also I'm a special advisor to the cabinet of Prime Minister Kishida, and his initiative, AZEC, Asia Zero Emission Community, I'm in charge of energy transition. And not just only that renewable energy, but also that new technology like hydrogen, ammonia is also important. Both India and Japan can cover full supply chain. In the US, there are massive subsidies available under the Inflation Reduction Act. But I'm a little bit worried that there's a movement of protectionism in the US. So that in order to accelerate the deployment of hydrogen, ammonia from the US to outside the US, especially for like-minded countries, I already talked to South Korea. In the APEC meeting, Prime Minister Kishida proposed to President Yoon Suk-yeol that for both Korea and Japan to cover the full supply chain of hydrogen and ammonia. Then, this year, I'd like to expand the AZEC, Asia Zero Emission Community, to a South Pacific Island nation state, or now the Deputy Prime Minister Prasado of the Republic of Fiji is attended, so that's a good opportunity of this. And next target is to invite India. By invitation of India, if India join AZEC, the AZEC is now regarded as a regional initiative in the Southeast Asia and Japan, ASEAN countries, and Japan and Australia. But if India join, it's to be a very global initiative. There's huge opportunity to be a global initiative, and we are jointly going to make a rule setting towards carbon neutrality. My thought is not, regardless of the color, blue, green, we need to have a very standard, global standard based upon the science and the transparent rule, which is the carbon intensity. That's my thought, that I'm confident that India is able to join the AZEC, kicking off this roundtable. This is my ambition. Thank you.
Thank you, Maeda-san. Let me invite Takeshi Ninami, Chairperson Keizai UK and President and CEO of the Suntory Holdings. Ninami-san, over to you.
Thank you, Samir. And Maeda-san, thank you for your insightful speech. First and foremost, Minister Jaishankar, welcome back to Tokyo. And good to see you since we had a very successful trilateral commission meeting, plenary meeting in Delhi. That was great. Now, I'd like to touch on three main themes to deepen the Japan-India relationship. First, the potential for doing business in India. Second, investing in people for the purpose. And third, the need for further people-to-people exchange at the foundation for future Japan-India relations. During the 3 decades in deflation, Japan has lost its ability to take on challenges and healthy risks. The result of deflation is truly frightening. And I hope China will not get into too much deflation. It's a monster. 30 years. We have struggled over so many years, just like I said, 30 years to get out of deflation. But finally, we're so happy to say we're beginning to move from cost of inflation to moderate inflation around 2 to 3%. In addition, wages, which have maintained stagnant for many years, are starting to rise gradually, and the stock prices are somehow at the record highs. I feel more or less a disconnect between the real economy and the current stock prices, to be honest. The current positive momentum could not be better opportunity for the revitalization of Japan. Now is the time. We must deepen relations with the dynamic countries like India and make this turning point to awaken our animal spirits of Japan. I read the book, The India Way, written by Minister Jaishankar, that it is widely recognized in the Indian government that cooperation with Japan has a tremendous potential in economic and even security. At the same time, the minister also advises that Japan should show a strong commitment to take more risks and expand its scale. I could not agree more. Japan must take on challenges with a strong sense of urgency, especially on the business side, to show its animal spirits and boldly take on new challenges, or else will be left behind in the world. This is the last chance, I believe. Today, we Japanese companies are more interested in India than ever before. We are particularly excited by the prospect of a further growth in demand for not only infrastructure, semiconductor technology, energy, but also consumer goods. Due to India's expanding middle class, this is amazing. Middle class has been expanding. Consumption is so important for economy, needed to say. In that context, the product-linked incentive that India is currently promoting is motivating Japanese companies to expand their businesses in India. But its targets are limited, in a way to say, to fields such as electronics and medical equipment. It would be great to broaden the scope, such as of food products and nutrition, for example, with a view to creating new markets to increase the health awareness, and exporting to other countries in the future. For example, Suntory is convinced that there are great business opportunities in beverages business and nutrition. In addition to sales within India, Suntory would like to consider establishing a production base in India in order to utilize India as a hub for overseas exports, not only the domestic business in India. In addition, we'll explore the possibility of health food products, nutrition, targeting Indian consumers who are very much conscious about the health after the COVID. In order to further develop various industries, a stable supply of energy is absolutely essential, not to mention attracting investment. We recognize that this is a common issue that both Japan and India face now, which is that our countries do not have natural resources, and that there is great potential for cooperation in solving this issue. For example, the National Green Hydrogen Mission that India is pursuing. This is very interesting. Japan's strength lies in the technological capabilities in the areas of hydrogen production, as well as transportation, steel, and power generation on the hydrogen utilization side. The utilization of nuclear power is also very important. Regarding nuclear power generation, Japan has had some major unfortunate accidents, as you know, in Fukushima, but has gained experience in safety measures as a result. I think these safety measures are the best in the world, though the accidents were so unfortunate. I believe that's a human error. I think that Japan's know-how on safety measures accumulated through these learnings over many years can be applied in even India, I think. So we'd like to share, for the sake of the very safe reactors using the nuclear. To order the effective utilization of nuclear power in the future, I believe Japan and India should also progress joint research on nuclear power. Second, in order to innovate, we must thoroughly develop human resources and strengthen basic R&D. This is no longer an era in which a country can conduct R&D only domestically. Collaboration among friendly and allied countries is indispensable. With economic security in mind, we must think about how to deal with the geopolitical tensions very successfully. And there is an increasing need for Japan and India to work together to develop human resources. Rather than covering all areas, we should focus on areas of national importance, such as quantum, biotechnology, and healthcare, including preventive medicine. Healthcare, in particular, is directly related to improving human well-being. Japan is well-positioned to collect a large amount of data on its declining birth rate and aging population, while India, with its strength in digital technology and young people, but eventually people are aging, has the ability to use the data and AI to a great extent. This is exactly where Japan and India can collaborate without needing a conventional Western-centric innovation approach. Cooperation among universities, as well as research institutions, is very important. For example, Japan has the Okinawa Institute of Science and Technology, we call OIST, ranking 9th in Nature in 10 years. An interdisciplinary graduate university in the field of science and technology, which brings together outstanding researchers from abroad. Definitely, we should invite from India to conduct a high-quality basic research. As I mentioned, by inviting talent from India to come to Japan as well, potential new innovations will emerge, and vice versa. We will send our talented people to India. Third, lastly, is the need for more human exchange, as noted in Minister Jaishankar's book. There still remains a gap in thinking between India and Japan, and what both sides need to further deepen Japan-India relations is continued dialogue to facilitate understanding. I myself visit India on a regular basis. I'll be there a week from now, visiting major cities. And I'm greatly inspired every time by the Indian people's hope for the future. So because of these contexts, Keizai Yukai also believes that it is important to first learn about India much more with an open mind, and has therefore established a committee on India for the first time in 11 years. And of course, this is led by Chairman Maeda. Thank you, Maeda-san, for your time as a chairperson. And I would like to send the mission every year to engage, covering many areas. And we'd like to have deepened the trust between two countries. The key is to establish true trust, not simply connection based on, I would say, superficial interests. Such a real trust can take a long time, perhaps 10 years, perhaps 30 years to cultivate. In fact, I'm vice chair of US-Japan Foundation, and those organizations support college and high school students in Japan and the United States to study abroad and contribute greatly to grassroots exchange. This is long-term commitment and investment to the future. The exchange's specific structure includes two intensive week-long conferences, one in each country, bringing together delegates ranging from year 28 to 42. So those middle age, for interactive discussions and cultural exchange. Up till now, 500 rather young leaders have taken part in this program, and the alumni included leaders like Minister Taro Kono and Shozaki, and other government representatives in the US and Japan. This is that one we have to pursue together between India and Japan. Such a mechanism for grassroots exchange between Japan and India is to be strengthened. So, for example, institutions should be established to collect donations to create the endowment from corporations like ours and other organizations to be directed at the nurturing the next generations of pro-Japanese, pro-Indian leaders, thereby building a foundation of real trust between the two countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nami-san. Now, without further ado, let me invite the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to address us. And after that, we will have a little bit of a conversation with you, sir, and pose a few questions from the audience and from others. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Samir. I'm delighted to participate at the Raisina at Tokyo. And let me begin by thanking ORF, JBIC, and Keizai Doyukai for their collaboration, specifically Samir, Maeda-san, Nenami-san for their leadership in this particular enterprise. Now, this session is about how India and Japan, who enjoy a special strategic and global partnership, intend to meet the challenges facing the global order. There are many aspects to this subject, and I will flag 8 points that I believe are worthy of debate. The first pertains to the order itself, created by the accumulation of political and economic rebalancing, accelerated by globalization, and now reflected in emerging multipolarity. Whatever metrics we use, GDP, technology, influence, or demography, the top 20 or 30 nations today are not what they were 2 decades ago. Even less so what they were 4 or 8 decades ago. Not only are the countries that impact us different, but so are the relative weight, importance, and capability. As a result, new balances are being sought and occasionally achieved. This drives the volatility that we currently characterize as the global order. The second refers to the structure of the order. That has frayed in many ways, becoming less predictable or even less disciplined. In fact, there is a considerable amount of disorder. It has become much harder to create a consensus among more players, especially as they do not agree on their inter se position. What we see in multilateralism, especially the United Nations, is both an expression of this as well as a cause. Consequently, we are turning increasingly to like-minded partners who gather together for a particular purpose. The third is in regard to the landscape. After 1945, this was neatly compartmentalized into theaters for the convenience of dominant powers. That has begun to change as capabilities are constrained and commitments come into question. A more modest era requires greater collaboration. And it also requires wider arenas to be effective. A good example of this is the emergence of the Indo-Pacific. Fourth, there are the different challenges that we confront. 3 decades of globalization have created tremendous economic and technology concentrations, which now have major strategic implications. These have led to the leveraging of trade, of investment, connectivity, resources, even of mobility. In many cases, the nature of power itself has undergone a change. This has been aggravated further by the impact of technology. National boundaries no longer provide effective defense. On the contrary, every technology advance, AI or chips, green or clean tech, space or drones, has also brought its own new vulnerabilities. Few nations can deal with it on their own. At the same time, the competition for primacy has also become more intense. Fifth, to add to this mix is a shift in global attitudes. The unequal benefits of globalization and the stagnation in the quality of life of many societies has created political backlash. The trauma of COVID has made the world even more insecure. We have all experienced what it is to depend on others for basic necessities. Strategic autonomy is therefore sought by many more countries and regions. Sixth, in this background, it is not surprising that global risk-taking has been on the increase. We see it in conflict in Europe, in disregard for international law in Asia, and in the ongoing developments in the Middle East, and often in the weaponization of the normal. Long-standing agreements are not being necessarily observed, raising question marks about the stability of the environment in which we all operate. Seventh, the most universal expression of the global order is still the United Nations. Its reform is therefore of paramount importance. As fellow members of the G4 grouping, India and Japan seek to make the UN structures more contemporary. This is clearly an uphill task, but one in which we must persevere. As to powers that are so central to multipolarity in Asia, it is also in our common interest that the overall balance remains in favor of freedom, openness, transparency, and a rules-based order. The world will watch how we support each other in this shared goal through various relationships and initiatives. FOIP, which Prime Minister Kishida mentioned at length, is particularly important in this regard. And eighth, I think it's important that Japan today appreciates the pace of change in India. This is a country today which is building 28 kilometers of highway every day, which is creating 8 new airports every year, which is establishing 1.5 to 2 metros every year, which has, for the last 10 years, built 2 new colleges every day, and which has doubled its technical and medical institutions and output. This transformation of India makes us a more effective and credible partner, whether it is the ease of doing business, infrastructure development, ease of living, digital delivery, a startup and innovation culture, or shaping the international agenda. India is clearly a very different country today. This is important for Japanese to recognize. Summing it all up, the world is now more volatile, uncertain, unpredictable, and open-ended. This is the prospect that India and Japan have to confront, both from their national perspectives as well as from the point of view of their own relationship. Can we safeguard stability, security, freedom, progress, and prosperity for ourselves, for the larger region, and indeed for the world? So with that in mind, there are a few propositions that are worth examining. One, can our economic weight be a greater stabilizing factor? Between India and Japan, trade has stagnated, but investments have been much more dynamic. Is there scope for a big jump? And I refer here to what Nenami-san said, that today make in India and export from India are two possibilities which should be explored by Japanese companies. Second, the deployment of technologies that are on the horizon is clearly going to be a game changer. Is there scope for collaboration in that regard? Obvious examples are the semiconductor domain, electric mobility, renewables, artificial intelligence, and space. But can we build the necessary talent connect? Third, as two nations with strong climate change priorities, can we develop a practical cooperation in support of our global objectives? Japan has a history of involvement with logistics and mass transportation in India. While our energy trajectories may have been separate so far, green hydrogen and green ammonia are bringing many potential partners together. Are these new areas worth exploring? 4, connectivity is also acquiring greater salience with new production and consumption centers. India is today working on major corridors, both to its east and to its west. They include, on the west, the IMEC initiative through the Arabian Peninsula and the International North-South Transport Corridor. And to the east, the Trilateral Highway in Southeast Asia and the Chennai-Vladivostok route that also has polar implications. Now bear in mind, if these corridors, when they are completed, essentially would connect the Atlantic to the Pacific through Asia. Our two nations have converging views about the need for transparent and collaborative connectivity. So how can we collaborate in this domain? A fifth proposition is that in a world where global commons and global good is being shortchanged every day, greater development efforts by the more capable international players is imperative. As a voice of the Global South, India is particularly conscious of this responsibility. Our development efforts today span 78 nations across different continents. Can India and Japan coordinate in regard to their development assistance? Sixth, the responsibility to safeguard and secure is no less onerous. Maritime safety and security have become particularly pressing concerns. We can see that at the Red Sea every day. We've just had the first casualties there in shipping. So have issues of cybersecurity. At the same time, the challenges of the past and the present remain very, very much with us. Counter-terrorism is a good example. It is also necessary to strengthen our defense capabilities for the benefit of the larger region. This family of defense and security concerns are likely to occupy a larger place in our thinking. So let me conclude with three broad observations. One, the world is heading for re-globalization with building of resilient and reliable supply chains and trusted and transparent digital transactions. India and Japan are natural partners in that regard. Two, as democracies and market economies, we also share basic affinities. Our commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific is being taken forward by the Quad with each passing year. The value of this contribution is also being increasingly appreciated across the world. And three, as we look at the opportunities and challenges of the future, the comfort we have built up is a foundation today to think more ambitiously. The progress in India in the last decade promises even more for our partnership. This gathering has been convened precisely to assess the future of our collaboration. I look forward to its deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, External Affairs Minister, for that concise and yet extensive sweep on the state of play between India, Japan, and of course in context of the global developments. We are now going to have a few questions and remarks posed to you, Minister. Let me first start by Maida-san. Let me invite him if he wants to pose a question or some comments based on your speech. Maida-san.
Thank you. Actually, that both speakers of the Nami-san and Dr. Jaishankar talk about huge opportunity of cooperation with two countries on the various sectors, and also the broader spectrum. My sense is that just only the blue chip corporations investment, and also that the expansion of the business is not enough. We need to bring and foster the startup for that the new economies, and also that to cope with vulnerability and volatility and uncertainty, and very divided the world right now. And trust is very important, so that by making of some of the endowment, that's a good proposal. And we need to have, well, for the endowment, we need to have kind of a joint taxation, the exemption mechanism. That's very important to facilitate more endowment, and also that philanthropy as well, that we need the philanthropy will be a basic points to develop this endowment. Not just only business interest, but also the philanthropy is very important. So that's the ORF now. I believe that they have a young fellow, the initiative. They expand to that, not just only the Indo-Pacific, but also that others part of the world, including Africa and the Middle East. And also that India has a huge kind of potential for the region. So I have a couple of questions to both Minami-san and also the Dr. Jaishankar. How the Japanese businesses and Japanese startup and can work together with the Indian businesses startup in third countries. How we can build up the roadmap to work together in third countries, and especially like-minded countries. So I'm also curious of that position of the Indian to Russia, because you talk about the Chennai Vladivostok, the connectivity, so that's very briefly. But I'm very curious about your vision on how we can talk, we can not cooperate, but we can deal with Russian while that they continue to make the aggression to the neighbor.
Thank you, Maida-san. Ninami-san, do you want to come in at this stage and add something? Then I'll turn it back to the minister.
Startup engages between India and Japan. As a matter of fact, it has already started, but not only India, Japan, but also Silicon Valley, ASEAN countries. How we can draw the line only between Japan and India. I think those startups, leaders are mostly from India, quite a lot. And believe me, I think it's been already engaging between Japan and India in that space. But how to promote the activity? It's the issue. So we, Keizai Yukai, are working with them, and the METI is supporting startup activities in the region and in the Pacific region. So I think we've been working on it, and but that scenes should be more visible to the ASEAN countries, of course, not only in Japan and in India. So how we can demonstrate the reality of the current engages between India and Japan, the startup space. Thank you.
Yes. Maida-san, your question, what do we do more in third countries? I think we need to do first more in second countries, in our own relationship. Because when I look at the pace of change today and the new opportunities today in India, I don't see that reflected really in the dynamism of our ties. That, to Ninami-san, I would say, Kezai Doyukai should come every year. I will receive you and look after you. Because what is happening today is that the ground situation in India is changing at a very, very rapid rate. I mean, even we who live in India today struggle to keep up with the pace of change. I go to the same city or town which I went 2 years ago, and I find it's very different. Because there are some places where we will naturally meet. The US is one, But to me today, making our relationship bigger and more consequential and also more contemporary, that when you look at these new and emerging areas, here are there possibilities of our working together. This really, the other is really the middle classization of India, that, just look at it, what is happening bottom up, okay? In the last 10 years, you actually have had 250 million people who would have been classified as being in absolute poverty now get out of it, which really means the baseline of the society has moved up. So you're creating a new middle class, you are creating a new middle class, you're creating upper middle class. So all of which, even for your business, is new demand and new consumption. So I think that's probably where we should be putting our energies. The Russia issue, what is happening, what happens sometimes in life is, in history, is that things are not always go the way they are expected to or the way it is calculated to. Essentially, if you look at the last 2 years, Russia has, because of the Ukraine conflict, today the Russia-Western relationship has broken down, okay? Economically, it means that a lot of access which Russia had to the Western world is no longer there. And historically, Russia has always put a premium, that is the main access for them. So you actually have today the prospect of Russia turning more and more towards Asia. It can also turn to other continents, but I would say Asia is the most dynamic possibility for them. So we are already seeing a flow of Russian trade, of investments, of resources, of even collaborations towards Asian destinations. I don't think it will be a short-term trend. I think what will happen if this continues for a few years, in any case, Russia will, obviously, once it is set, who will give it up? So they will consolidate on that. So I expect, actually, in a way, almost like a change in Russia's direction towards the world. And I think it has very interesting implications for us in Asia, because like any big power, Russia will also want multiple options.
Let me bring in a few in the room, and we'll collect a few questions and then turn it back to you, sir. Can I bring Wong Kim Yin, CEO of Sembcorp Singapore?
Yes. First of all, thank you to the organizers for having us here. Sembcorp is a company that is based in Singapore, and I want to echo Dr. Jaishankar's this comment about the pace of change in India. We experienced it firsthand over the last few years. We invested some $5 billion into India, most of it in the last 3 years. So we are focused in renewables and now working with Japanese partners to develop hydrogen business. Part of our mind is thinking about production in India for delivery into Japan to help decarbonization. Dr. Jaishankar mentioned both countries, India as well as Japan, have ambitious energy transition plans. What would you say to the business community, people like us, that we can do to further accelerate, to leverage on this pace that you just mentioned, and for us to contribute and ride onto this very ambitious energy transition plan? Thank you.
Thank you. Can I bring Professor Paul Kapoor from the Naval Postgraduate School and Hoover Institute?
Thank you, Samir. Dr. Jaishankar, we've heard a lot about economic challenges and opportunities for India and Japan in the Indo-Pacific region, how they can work together to meet and leverage those opportunities and challenges to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. But lurking in the background of the economic landscape is a hard power challenge resulting from China's rise in behavior. And a foundation of security is really going to be necessary to achieve the economic goals that we're talking about, for those to be realized and for the Indo-Pacific to remain free and open. I wonder if you could say a little bit about how you see that hard power challenge and how India, Japan, and the other Quad countries perhaps as well can cooperate to meet it and create that background security that will be necessary for us to achieve our economic goals and ensure the freedom and openness of the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you.
Can I bring in Yamamoto-san?
Thank you, Samuel. And thank you, Minister, Excellency, and Maeda-san and Ninami-san. Such a very thought-provoking conversation. Minister, my question is about building on the conversation that we heard, is about green transition and climate action. And in this green transition and climate action, very important field, how to facilitate more private sector collaboration between Japan and India. And let me a little bit more add more onto that. Since yesterday, we heard a lot of things about the long history of our two great nations, and we now at the G2G level, we have a highest level of partnership. And you emphasized the importance of like-minded partners. We are. And on that, your NIIF and our JBIC, Maeda-san, set up a Japan-India Fund last year to facilitate collaboration in this very important field of green transition and climate action. But building on the, my question from my colleague from Singapore, what can we do as a private sector to do more? That's my question. Thank you.
Sir, can I just add something to that question? In your assessment, is the P2P or the B2B, the business to business and the people to people, underperforming vis-a-vis the G2G in the India-Japan context? Okay, you already have that. Great. Now, final intervention is from Indranil Chitle from Pune. Where are you, Indranil?
Hello.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir. Sir, the way the Indian economy is poised to grow, we are going to get more and more stable. And that way, how do you see the policy evolve with how India engages with the world?
Over to you, sir.
I'll take the three, in a way, economic questions and then come to Dr. Kapoor's hard power challenge. In different ways, you're all asking the same thing. Our colleague from Singapore says, how do I leverage the pace? You are asking, saying, Yamamoto-san saying, okay, there's a green transition, we both are committed to climate, so okay, now what do we do? And my colleague here from Pune is asking, saying, Indian economy is growing, what's the nature of its engagement with the world? I feel in one common answer, which is what I pointed to Samir on a slip, is in many, I would say most relationships, today the G2G has actually gone out ahead. So Japan is definitely a case, where if you look at the frequency of our meetings at various levels, it's very impressive. We are not seeing we are not seeing enough the similar B2B and P2P. You know, ideally, I mean, just think about it. If you have today a $3.5 trillion economy which is growing at 7%, you would imagine logically that there would be many more business delegations actually coming and exploring that. There are, but I don't see that many from Japan. And forgive my saying it, I also don't see that many from Singapore as I used to. So what I actually, when I look at the levels of interest, very honestly, I mean, within ourselves, I would say I've suddenly seen Europe awake. That you know, when I look today at the intensity with which Europe is today engaging India, you know, it's like somebody turned on that switch. You know, the U.S. is doing it. The U.S. has been doing it pretty consistently, and the trajectory goes up. So we would really be very much more interested. You know, the paradox is in the Indian mind, the era of reform was the era when we actually consciously moved to the economies east of India. You know, so for us, look east, act east, ASEAN, then the Northeast Asia, Japan, Korea, China. I mean, this is associated with the last 30 years. So, and there is a, you know, suddenly with Japan, you know, the weight of history is positive, the government relations are very good, the country branding is great. So you have everything going for you, but I'm not seeing that, you know, the business community really take up that challenge. There is one, you know, requirement in a way, and, you know, that's particularly relevant for Singapore. You know, when my colleague sitting here with me on my right asked, what does India do now? The Indian economy is externalizing. You know, if you look in terms, the trade levels are going up, exports are going up, FDI, both inward, outward, are going up. We have much more portfolio investments coming into our stock markets. When I look at the levels of travel, that is going up. In fact, one new trend we have seen is actually mobility, that more and more Indians are going out professionally, either, you know, as skills and, you know, STEM talent, or as service providers, or in certain geographies even as blue-collar workers. So if you ask me what is the direction we're going, definitely the engagement with the world is getting deeper. And again, from the government point of view, we are trying to give it some shape, which is why we have done, I mean, in this term, 2 FTAs with UAE and Australia. We have an FTA with EFTA countries, which is very advanced, with UK and EU under negotiation, and a few others as well. So my urging would be really, you know, that today business needs to kind of stay pace with the government. Also at the P2P level, you know, I look at the total number of Indian students abroad. At any given time, you know, there are today between 1.1 to 1.3 million Indian students abroad. I think not even 5% of it comes to Japan. You know, so you know, you can somewhere, you know, how to translate that goodwill into something more specific and concrete. That's an effort we need to make. So coming from that to the hard power challenge. Well, yes, you know, there is the reality. There's the reality of very big power shifts in the Indo-Pacific, and when there are very big shifts in capabilities and influence and presumably ambitions. Then there are all the accompanying political and strategic consequences of that. Now, the question is, this is not a question, it's not an issue whether you like it or you don't like it. There's a reality out there. You have to deal with that reality. Ideally, we would assume that, everybody would say, okay, things are changing, but let's keep it as stable as we can. Unfortunately, that's not what we have seen in the last decade. I mean, our own experience in the case of China, for example, is between 1975 to 2020, which is really 45 years, there was no bloodshed on the border. And in 2020, it changed. And today, when we look at the, we can disagree on many things, but when a country actually sort of does not observe written agreements with a neighbor, then I think you have cause for concern here, because it then raises a question mark about the stability of the relationship and, frankly, about intentions. So, for us today, certainly, how to, in a changing world, our own equilibrium, our own balances with other countries are changing as well. I mean, they don't have to be acrimonious, but the balance is changing. I mean, we cannot become, in GDP from number 11 to number 5 and everything remains the same. It will not remain the same. But how to create more new equilibriums in a less frictional manner? I think that is today the management of the global order. Some of us are trying to help. Some of us apparently have other approaches. And I think that is the issue.
I'm going to take 3 interventions, and I'm going to turn it back to you after that, sir. So let me first turn to, since I've received a note from Varun Batra. Varun, why don't you pose the first question? Short questions.
Yes.
We need to give him a chance to respond.
Good morning. So thank you, Dr. Jaishankar, for your comments. I think just sensing the mood around the room and the gap that the private sector has to fill because the government has gone way ahead in its dialogue. Would you consider, the PLI scheme has been so successful for EMS manufacturing in India, generating jobs, generating investment. Could you consider a similar scheme? Of course, you don't have to answer it now, but could the government consider a similar scheme for the entire climate change, energy transition piece? And I think you'll find a lot of purchase there amongst Japanese corporates, just using the same framework which you elaborated about bringing the technology and producing there.
Can I turn to Vivek Lal?
Honorable Minister, good morning. In terms of critical and emerging technologies, as you know, the US and India have had great success in advancing that agenda. Bringing Japan into that framework a little bit on artificial intelligence or autonomy or other areas, what do you see the role of academic institutions in terms of bringing the countries together?
In fact, you were in South Korea recently, and there is a move afoot with them. And I was wondering why is it Japan is missing there? Just a question. Gautam Saxena?
Thank you, Samir. Good morning, Dr. Jaishankar. I wanted to actually bring in another region into this conversation and the increasing interaction of India in the Middle East and the powerful connections built there. It almost seems that India has a choice of, a bunch of very strong countries knocking at the door. So when you think about commercial partnerships, is there a certain direction for certain sectors when you look at a Japan or a Singapore or a Middle East?
Prioritizing the opportunities in some sense. Anyone else? We have probably a chance for one more. Please go ahead. Introduce yourself quickly. And
yes, my name is Singh. I'm a board member of Shosei Mitsui. We are the world's biggest shipping company outside China. That is, China is the biggest, the second biggest.
well in India. I have a question with regard to manufacturing specifically, because we depend on manufacturing, in our case shipbuilding. What I notice is some Japanese companies like automotive, Suzuki Motor for instance, have already identified very strong growth potential in India. That's not the case in shipbuilding and many other manufacturing sectors. There are three areas in which I feel...
Ajay Singh, question please.
My question
Yeah.
is, why is there not a industrial policy, labor policy and energy policy connect between India and Japan so that low labor costs and availability of labor, low energy costs in India, specifically renewable energy. The cheapest solar power plant in India is 4 times cheaper than the most economical one in Japan. And of course, the convergence of markets. I think we connect at these three policies, labor, energy, and markets, needs to be at a deeper level. And my request and suggestion to the governments would be to create that connect, which would actually encourage Japanese industry to invest much more in manufacturing.
Okay. I didn't find a question there. I found a long suggestion there, which I think will be duly noted. But the
I got it.
Yeah. Sir, as we turn this over to you, I think one of the underlying themes of India's rise and India's economic pace, as you travel this particular region, South Korea and now Japan, how is the assessment of the broader community of this rise? One is how we assess our own rise. And what is the kind of response you're seeing from your partners as you travel through different parts of the world on India's rise? What is the difference in their conversations with you in the last few years or last few months?
Okay. Again, I see some commonalities, what Mr. Batra said, what Ajay said right at the end, and to some extent what Vivek's suggestion was. Some of the current PLI schemes do have climate action implications, some of them. But your point that we should focus it very much more, I certainly note, and I will discuss it with my colleagues. On Vivek's point about involving academic institutions, actually, it's interesting. This is one of the subtle changes which has started happening in India. I mean, a good example of it has been the 5G stack, which is currently being rolled out, and the role that IIT has had in that. And in quite a few other examples, I've actually seen today a willingness on the part of the governmental bureaucracy to reach out to academic institutions and contract them or to seek their advice and knowledge. Because, a change, when I speak about the pace of change in India, I would even venture to suggest there's been some mindset evolution. The idea that there are many things the government doesn't know and it needs to find the requisite experience somewhere in the environment. I think that kind of feeling has grown. What Ajay, you were saying, about labor, energy, industrial policies. To me, shipbuilding is a very exceptional field, because when I look at Indian capabilities, India's growth and India's capabilities, the one area where I don't see growth reflected in capabilities actually in shipping and in shipbuilding. Shipbuilding is actually better than shipping. It's one big gap today if you were to look at India's portfolio, and I think policymakers certainly are very conscious of it. But again, my advice is the expectation that there is a lack of policy connect. I think if businesses made a push, I'm not saying policy is always connected. Quite often it is not. But when businesses make a push, they compel policy exchanges, and out of that policy connects to happen. So again, I would urge very much, that if I were to look back, say, at the last decade of how much our ties with the US has changed, a big part of the push has actually come from businesses at both ends, that often they have made the, the linkages and provided the solutions and urged the government saying, go and, why don't you look? This is feasible, which left to itself, maybe the government would have concluded it is not. On the Middle East, do we have a choice? Yes, today, we have, I would say, very strong relations with all the Gulf states and, in fact, beyond as well, with Egypt, for example, certainly with Israel. Within the region, we have managed to navigate the, the challenges, the divides and the frictions of the region. But if I were to look at it globally today, for India, and India, which till the early 90s was very reliant on the Soviet world, which then broadened it out, and which then built up its relations in the East with ASEAN and then with Northeast Asia. Then we had to look at other areas where there were options. In the last decade, we've invested a lot of effort in the Middle East and on Europe. And I think the US too, that relationship has matured. So if I were to, because I'm eventually leading to your question, today when I look at the entirety of the world, I would say, yes, we have spread out much more. There are many more partners. There are regions, I mean, say in Latin America, today we would, for many of the big Latin America companies, we would be the third or fourth largest trade partner. Whereas just 10 years ago, we would be considered very, very far away. There are certain fields like energy, where, in energy or even today in food security, where Indian companies have actually gone out. In fact, when I look at some other relationship, B2B has been, I went on a trip to Latin America, and on one trip I went to 4 countries where no foreign minister in our history had ever been. In each country I found Indian business was there. And not just there, Indian business had got to all the right places. So sometimes business is ahead of you, sometimes it is behind you. I'm happy when they're ahead of us. But the question, Samir, to sum up, how do partners perceive us? I think they are absorbing the changes, looking at, okay, this is now a bigger India, bigger GDP, more capabilities. So what are they doing with it? Do they, let us say, if I were to give you an example, when I look today at the climate, the COP21 or the COP26 or the COP28, our relative importance and the expectations of us are more. When I look at even conferences like the SDG conference or the Summit of the Future conference, which is coming up in the UN, again, people expect more. If there are conflict situations, where does India stand becomes an issue. Even in bodies where we have been there a long time, like the non-aligned or the G77, people have factored in what has changed in India. So the challenge for us is also to prepare our own people today for a bigger global presence, a larger responsibility. When you send people, when we give, let us say, development assistance, we have to, it is important to explain to your people why you're doing it. Or if you are sending a first responder team to an earthquake in Turkey or, to a conflict zone, and the more Indians globalize, I mean, we have today roughly 20 million Indian nationals working abroad, and about maybe about 12, 13 people, a million people who were of Indian origin but foreign nationalities. Now, when you have so many people working abroad, that is also a responsibility for which we have to prepare. When COVID happened in the first year, we brought back 7 million Indians who are working abroad, who, where airlines had shut down, shipping lines had shut down, universities had shut down. So it's a different era today which we have entered, but we have just entered it. there is a ground there to navigate. But in that navigation, again, I'm coming back like a broken record to my main plea, which is that the India-Japan, I do regard that, because among the relationships, it's not a regional relationship. It is truly actually a globally consequential relationship. And in this world, this digital world we are entering, the world of AIs, of new ISET, the critical emerging technologies, I think there is a much new potential really to reforge that relationship at a higher level. And that would be the message that I would give to all of you.
No, thank you so much, sir, for your address and for engaging with all of us this morning. Let me confirm to you that on our part, Maida-san, Ninami-san and I, we are determined that this become an annual feature, and we convene communities from both sides so that we can have common purpose, common vision, and a common pathway to the future. Please join me in applauding the Honorable Minister for his interventions this morning. We will take a 10-minute break and be back for the closed door of the record conversations that will follow. Thank you so much.